again, please?
Emily Austin.
How do you feel about the perception among journalists, broadcast journalists, and the way that newsrooms are conveying the conflict?
Of course, similar to any political situation, except to me this is more humanitarian and human rights than politics. The media is divided as usual. You know, you see Fox is reporting more accurate statistics. You see CNN is pretty sympathetic towards Hamas, which is a little mind-boggling to me because I know every network has its own politics, but now we're fighting a terrorist group, and that should be universal no matter where you stand politically. And unfortunately, it's turned into a political matter, you know, pro-Biden, against Biden, and they're using it for their own selfish benefits, and I think that it should just be a fight between good and evil.
So the BLM movement has taken on the Palestinian cause as their new cause celebrate, and they're protesting in Times Square. They protest around here in Los Angeles and in Europe, England, terrible demonstrations. How should people perceive this conflict in terms of racialism?
I think what the Palestinian cause has done a good job in doing is finding groups that are either claiming to be oppressed or groups that live in a victim mentality, and they're using the common denominator of being a victim group, and they're trying to almost join forces and argue that they're more powerful in numbers. So the Palestinian cause trying to resonate with the Black Lives Matter cause, trying to resonate with Queers for Palestine, which couldn't be more of like an ironic statement. They're just trying to bridge together, like, look, we're all victims, so let's unify and become stronger in numbers. And they're using these false narratives like Israel's a racist state. That's just merely not true. They say black people aren't allowed in Israel. Israel literally did a mission to go save Ethiopians from Africa and bring them back to Israel from the lost tribes. So they're using lies to try to make Israel look like the racist state that it's not, and it's sad that people are just quick to believe things without doing any factual background checking.
Isn't Zionism a part of Judaism, and the idea that leftist Jews who may be a part of that movement say, well, we're Jewish, but we're anti-Zionist, and those who are marching against Israel are not anti-Semitic? What about the Zionistic aspect of Judaism? Aren't they together?
I think anti-Israel is being anti-Semitic. To say that, oh, you know, we like Jews, we just don't like Israel. If you don't think the Jews have the right to have a state to exist in, especially after the Holocaust, then you just hate Jews, and there's no beating around the bush. You know, they use Israel as an excuse to justify and mask their Jew hatred, but we're not dumb anymore, and we're not going to be quiet about it anymore. It's too obvious.
What's your concern about the members of the NBA who are taking on this matter in taking sides against Jews?
Honestly, the NBA itself has been very supportive of Israel. They were actually one of the first people to condemn the attacks. My issue with the athletes who are speaking out against Israel is really just that they don't really know what's happening. Like, I saw Jaylen Brown posted Free Gaza. Correct, Free Gaza from Hamas. Why are you making it seem like Israel's the villain? But I bet you if I had the opportunity to speak with Jaylen Brown, he wouldn't know what the reality of the situation is. So it stems from just a lack of education, and it's not their fault, but if you don't feel like you're educated enough, don't post.
How do you feel about this DEI aspect that when you talk about education, that curriculum writers are adopting into defining people by inherent racism based on their ethnicity?
DEI is racist. You are excluding people and you are categorizing people by race, which is a definition of racism. And counter-racism is still racism. You know, by saying I'm going to hire you because you're black or because you're a Jew or because you're white, you are now categorizing a person by their race, which is racism. If you're really not racist and you truly want equality, you'll judge people by the best job, not by skin color, not by religion, and not by race. So it's just counterproductive, and I think it's so silly that we're having these conversations and that people are afraid to have these conversations and admit that DEI is racist.
How do you think that what happened at Columbia University, and I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Ackman, who's a graduate, at Harvard, and the resignation of President Gay?
I think Bill said what everyone was too afraid to say. I think Bill is a legend for that. I think he's starting to spark these conversations that are long overdue, these conversations of DEI actually being bullshit, and Bill is the only person who actually had the courage to say it, so kudos to him.
And how do you feel about the rally here in Los Angeles today?
I'm very happy people came. I know it's freezing today. I know people didn't feel safe, but despite that, everybody still showed up and everyone's playing their part. I came from New York. People came from Toronto. People came from Montreal. So I think it's nice that from coast to coast, you know, I was just in Israel, now I'm here. We're all just here to show our solidarity, and it's really heartwarming.
What did you see in Israel that you think the mainstream press is ignoring?
I think that they're ignoring that Hamas is as big a threat as it is. You know, somehow people have become sympathetic towards Hamas, forgetting that they're a terrorist group. But I reassure you, if they saw the things that I saw in Israel, and they saw how many people are slaughtered, not just one house, but a whole community, and not just a person, but a whole family, and not just murdered, but brutally and savagely raped and beheaded and slaughtered, they maybe would be a little less sympathetic towards a terrorist group, I'd hope.
But is Israel also guilty of indiscriminate bombing?
I wouldn't say so. You know, if you follow the IDF on Twitter or if you join their Telegram groups, I've never met a military who announces what they're doing and when. I've never seen a military warn civilians to get out, and in retaliation, Hamas uses them as human shields. I've never seen an army so moral. Like, where was the warning on October 7th for the civilians who were slaughtered in their homes? Where was the warning, hey, we're gonna kidnap you and take you into Gaza? And instead, Israel's doing the right thing, and the world is trying to shift the narrative against Israel. Like, even these dog tags, they say, bring them home. Why isn't the narrative, release them now? Why is the always, release them now? They're putting the burden on Israel. They're saying, stop targeting civilians. Why isn't the narrative, stop using civilians as human shields, Hamas? They're always trying to shift the blame onto Israel, and it pisses me off.
If the public is genuinely concerned about the welfare of Palestinians, oughtn't they be crusading for surrender of the Hamas leadership?
That's one. B, all the ceasefire now people fail to realize if Hamas releases the hostages, there would be a ceasefire. So people just fail to point out the hypocrisy of a terrorist group. So I guess that's an irony in itself.
They fail to?
Yeah, they fail to call out who the real issue is. They've looked at Hamas as these freedom fighters instead of the terrorist group that they are. There's no difference between Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda. Terrorism is terrorism is terrorism, and there's no beating around the bush.
What would you think about the U.S. Accepting these Gazan as immigrants granting asylum into the United States or Canada?
I don't think that's our job. I think we need to secure our borders, unpopular opinion, but there's nothing wrong with having a border from country to country. If you would like to become a citizen, you can do it the same way my grandparents did. You can apply for citizenship, you can have your background check, because I don't think our border should be open to anyone that could come in, because yes, of course there are good people coming in, but yes, there are criminals too, and that should not be our problem or our burden.
From where did your grandparents immigrate?
Iraq to Israel to America.
What's the history of Iraqi immigration? Why did they leave?
Because Jews were being persecuted and ethnically cleansed from their homes, and my family, which was very wealthy in Iraq, were kicked out of their homes for being Jews. They were not allowed to practice their Judaism.
Are you familiar with the connection between the Nazi Party and the Iraqi government in the 1939-40?
I know every single Arab state president or prime minister has had a great relationship with Hitler, including the Grand Mufti, who tried to collaborate with Hitler in the final solution of killing the Jews, who was the leader of the Palestinian movement then.
But the Iraqis were the first to experience pogroms during World War II. Do they have a lesson that Americans should learn from?
The lesson is to learn what not to do from all of these Middle Eastern countries that have this baseless Jew hatred in them. That's a prime example of look at them and whatever they're doing, do the opposite.
Would this apply to immigrants from the Middle East in general?
Should we what?
Would this apply that we should be cautious about importing Middle East immigrants because they were raised in anti-Semitic cultures?
That's definitely a huge concern. I mean, most Middle Eastern countries do start from a very young age brainwashing people to hate Jews. And I said in my speech earlier, it starts with the Jews, but it doesn't end with the Jews because hate is a disease. So if you hate one person because of their religion, what's stopping you from hating another person because of their religion if it doesn't agree with your narrative?